right from my undergraduate days in engineering, we were required to take 5 courses in philosophy. And as a part of that coursework, I learned something about meditation, about mindfulness, getting my mind to a state of alertness and vigilance so that I can start perceiving things different than what my cluttered mind would look at them. So once I got introduced to that, and this was way back in my undergraduate days, that would be 30 plus years ago, I realized that things are not what they seem to be, and sometimes to get to the intuitive sense of things, you need to get your mind at rest in an uncluttered state of mind. And then it became a regular practice with me. So since then I have been practicing almost every day. I miss a few here and there, but I do meditate every day, and I try to clear my mind of all these dialogues going on with me. You know, the different aspects of meditation are there all the time. You know, I have practiced the Buddhist practice. I have practiced the Hindu way of meditation. I'm very attracted to Zen way of thinking. So I think what I really do in life is probably a mixture of all of them. So I have made the mindfulness practice probably my own. It's a blend of different ways of mindfulness. Absolutely. I think in my position as director of the Institute for Critical Technology and Applied Science, and even before that, just to give you a brief history, after graduating from Cornell, I spent 15 years at Bell Laboratories. And that was an environment which was intellectually extremely exciting. And we were always looking for new things to do, looking for innovative things. And it turns out if you really want to innovate, meditation, mindfulness, clarity of mind helps you, as I said before, see things in a different light. And innovation is doing something different than what you are normally used to thinking, right? I didn't want to believe in incremental advances in technology, for example. So I'm looking for some disruptive advances, right? Black swan kind of ideas. If you are not familiar with, for example, Black Swan, there's a recent book by Nassim Taleb. And he talks about the black swan is an outlier. It's an event which is unexpected. But when it happens, it has unprecedented impact. For example, in terms of technology, the discovery of or the invention of laser, computer, internet, those are black swans. So if you want to get into that kind of innovation, which is transformative, then you need that state of mind in which you can really think of some outliers, some black swans. So that has helped me right from my days of Bell Laboratories to University of Colorado Boulder, and then since 2006 at Virginia Tech, when we had to put together this institute to do interdisciplinary, transformative research at the intersection of different disciplines. So in a direct answer to your question, yes, it has helped me in my career for 3 decades plus. Yeah, I can't really speak to that in those terms because I haven't done the blind experiment. In which for 10 years I didn't do it, and for the other 10 years I did it, and I could see the difference. So I won't be able to comment on that with certainty, because I know what I have done, and it has been helpful. So the opposite on that may not be true. But in a very big way. I think in one of those moments, when you are transported into a different plane of consciousness during the contemplation, some kernels of truth come to you that you make as part of your life. So one of the things that in one of those moments came to me was the whole purpose of life is to make every relationship a little better because you are there, every institute or institution a little better because you are there. So I'm hoping that my wife's life is a little better because I'm her husband, my daughter's life is a little better because I'm her father, and Virginia Tech's is better, a little bit better because I'm directing an institute. So I think it really fundamentally changed the way I look at life, the way I look at my family. And the other one of those kernels of truth was, don't expect a lot in return, right? So you make everything a little better, or try to make everything a little better, but don't expect something in return. And I think that feeling of doing something for everybody else, a little, making their lives a little better, making the institute a little better, the fundamental behind that is that you really love, there is a love, element of love in that. So you love people, you love the institute, you love planet Earth, you love the cosmos, and you are trying to make them a little better. It varies. My brother did. I think he used to practice maybe 3 hours a day. Compared to me, I do it only like half an hour, 40 minutes a day. I don't think my family has gotten into it. They know it. I'm sure one of these days they will get into it. Yeah, so one of the things that I have done, I'm trying to focus on rural development, on the rural communities, on the developing communities, and trying to make those communities as much as possible self-reliant through sustainable technologies. So for example, in India, I have adopted one village, and the purpose is to make that whole village, it's a village of 1,200 people, and the purpose is to make that village as self-reliant as possible through sustainable technologies like solar energy, through sustainable water technologies like rainwater harvesting, through nanotechnology. So we are trying to do that. In parallel, in our own region, in our backyard, I'm trying to adopt a place, a community. And then pedagogically speaking, I can even think about how do those sustainable technology practices, how are they adopted in a developing community in a developed country versus a developing community in a developing country. So that would be an interesting thing to do. And I also, for example, we have different chapters, different charities. One of the things that we have learned, although I have spoken already about that village, but in general, we don't talk about our work that we do in that spirit, because again, we don't do it for others. Essentially, we do it for ourselves. If it didn't give me inner satisfaction to do any of those things, whether it's the charity work or the development work, my own sense is I won't do it. So I'm not doing it to uplift some people. I don't believe in that. I do it because somewhere, in some sense, it gives me satisfaction. So I'm being selfish when I do that. I'm not doing it for others. And that again is one of those things that comes to you in one of those moments of uncluttered mind. We live in a very strong, I call it hyper-Schumpeterian world, a very fast-paced technological world, in which technologies are moving so fast. I'll speak about engineering, for example. It turns out that the stuff we teach our undergraduates in their freshman year, by the time they get to the junior year, half of what we taught them is already obsolete. So technology is moving very fast. Right? And if you think of some of the transformative technologies, nanotechnology, cellular molecular biology, information technology, cognitive science, the brain, right? These are very powerful technologies. Right? Take nanotechnology just by itself. It's supposed to be the next industrial revolution. It is going to be pervasive in every walk of our lives. Right? So these technologies are moving so fast. And what's happening is we are really not finding enough time in our own lives to be connected to ourselves. Right? We are connected wonderfully to the external world, to our friends, to the internet, to the Facebook, to the LinkedIn, you name it, right? We are connected with all of them. But we don't seem to have time to connect to ourselves. We start feeling anxious if we haven't looked at our iPhone for a few minutes because we might have missed something, right? And half the time, most of those emails needed to be deleted, right? But we get anxious, we need to respond to them. So I think that's, in this kind of age, highly technological age, we need time to sit back and reflect and be connected with ourselves and see what actually matters. What is the most important thing to do in life? Right? Is it just responding to the email every second, or is it loving your brother or sister a little more? Right? So I think in this society it is all the same more important. And I'll admit to you, when I was going to Cornell, I had a sort of a utopian dream. I thought we are going to make everybody's life so wonderful. They will have to work only 4 hours a day. Then they can go home, listen to Mozart, have a glass of wine, sit there, relax, and do some finer things in life, and maybe even have some contemplation, right? But what have we done? We are now connected 24 hours a day probably, and we don't seem to have that time. So I think it is absolutely more important. It's probably more important now than ever that we do have this time devoted for getting in touch with ourselves. Absolutely. We are a very comprehensive university, but we are also a very strong engineering school too, right? And I think we are part of the world at large. We are not isolated from them. And we are as technologically, I guess, integrated in this society, and we are as connected to the internet, to the iPhones and the iPads and the computers as everybody else is. So for the future of this society, right, I'm going to be presenting, for example, at the forum, Mechanical Engineering Curriculum 2029. Right? And the reason I'm picking up 2029 and entering student into our engineering in 2025, will be graduating in 2029. So 2025 is 12 years from today, right? That means a kid entering the elementary school, I want to get there, right? So I want to prepare our kids entering into our elementary school now to become the entering graduate students in 2025, so that by the time they graduate from Virginia Tech in 2029, they are the future engineers. They are the holistic engineers. They are the holistic scientists, the social scientists, the life scientists, humanists. I want those graduates from Virginia Tech to be able to really make a change, to be the future leaders of this society. If you think by 2030, we'll have approximately 9 billion people, right? If you just try to meet their needs of water, of energy, meeting the needs of our environment, we will need innovative solutions. We will need new kind of graduates who will be able to integrate holistically the humanities, social sciences, life sciences, engineering together. So I think it's absolutely important for Virginia Tech as a land-grant comprehensive university to be able to graduate our young people who can be the leaders of tomorrow, who can also face the problems which are going to be with us in times to come. So extremely important for Virginia Tech, especially as a land grant university. I think it's our mission, it's our responsibility as academics to graduate engineers who can go outside and be the leaders of tomorrow. Absolutely. The problems that are facing us, they're huge. As I just mentioned, population is going to go to 9 billion, and we are depleting our resources. Planet Earth has very finite resources. Right? So I think getting to the point in those moments of contemplation, where we can define for us, what do we need versus what do we want? So, we focus on the supply side many a time, at least in my viewpoint. From engineering, we are going to provide different solutions. We can produce new crops with a high yield, right? But I think there's the other dimension. The other dimension is, can we, on the consumption side, can we reduce our level of consumption? Can we go to I need versus I want culture? And those kinds of I think perceptions come in those moments of contemplation. So I think it's extremely important that we integrate that into our daily lives, into our curriculum, and into our society as a whole. Absolutely. Basically what we are thinking is from the upcoming forum, this is just a seed we are going to plant, right? And if we can have this seed grow into a small tree, will bear more fruit, and we can expand ourselves. Virginia Tech, again, is a small piece of, or a small swath of land in the big country. But somewhere you have to start the experiment. I'm not saying we are the only ones. I think this idea is probably catching up. One of the things I have learned in my life, after having spent 15 years in Bell Laboratories and otherwise later on, when there is a good idea, we don't have just only one company or one institution doesn't have the monopoly. It is in the air, antennas are going to go up, and people get this idea. So I think mindfulness is going to catch on, and it will become an integral part of the curriculum. We are absolutely delighted that we are going to do that at Virginia Tech through this conference, and hopefully this will spread from here, or we'll be partnering with other institutions and make it as integral part of our lives as internet is. I would like to see it mainstream, and I think if you look at the kind of stresses our society is going through, and if we do some benchmarking and if we find what some very developed societies in the past did who are very successful, we'll find that inner tuning, I call it inner tuning. We take our cars and we get them tuned. We need our minds to be tuned. And I think if you go back to what I said 30 seconds earlier, if you benchmark and find some societies which are very successful in the past, you will find that this was a part of their general being. This was in the DNA of those societies to have contemplation, meditation, vigilance of mind, a part of their story. It needs to get there. It is definitely not mainstream. I think it's by fits and starts. And here's the part that I think I would like to see change. Right? We go through a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of the episode of depression in the society. And then people go and seek these kinds of, they seek yoga, they will seek some meditation, they will seek some retreats. I think we don't want to get to a point of depression. We need to have the preventative measure, right? We need to do this as a part of, we need to make this as a part of our lives so that we don't get there, right? We don't need to go to a state of depression and then say, oh, I need to go to meditation, I need to have contemplation, right? we need to make this early on. Remember I said, looking at Engineer of 2029, and I'm going to start from elementary school. We need to get this right there from grade 1, so that by the time they come to us in engineering college, I already have students who are always thinking beyond what is being taught to them in the class. They can also integrate that in those moments of alertness and come up with something new solutions. I personally think it is still slow, much as I would like to see it at a faster pace. But I think like everything else, once it takes off, most of these things, in my opinion, and I think this is an engineering bias, they follow this exponential curve, right? First it is very slow, and then a point comes on, they take off. And I think we're getting there. I don't think it's a fad at all. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at the societies which were economically, technologically developed according to their own times, they ultimately had to bring in this concept of contemplation. Otherwise, like advanced civilizations, they also have fall, right? And I think it's the need of the times. The good thing is, we are now connected. Although I talked about being too much externally connected, at the same time, there's an advantage. If something, happens here, if some good thing happens here, it catches on. Suddenly, all of us will be tweeting and we'll be putting on our Facebook, hey, I went to that conference, boy, what a wonderful thing it was. And by the way, in this conference, we decided we are not going to have only theoretical sessions. We are also going to have some practice, right? And sometimes that's all it takes, right? Once you get into that and you say, wow, I had an aha moment and I want to repeat that aha moment, then you don't need us at that point of time. Then people get into this. So I think the idea of being connected right now, and if our students in this conference or the attendees, they get some of those, and the word will spread pretty fast. Maybe we'll get something on YouTube, and it will show some people in that state and say, I don't recognize that guy. He seems so calm, right? So maybe that will happen. There is one thing with meditation, contemplation, mindfulness. It does take some time. You have to do it not just for one day or a couple of days. You have to practice it. You have to start slow. Maybe you'll start with, I normally tell my students, start with 5 minutes maybe, and then go to 10 minutes, get to at least half an hour. But once you get to that point of half an hour every day, on the other hand, even if you get to 10 minutes but do it every day rather than half an hour every other third day, I think that's where it needs to be. So I think once people get into it and they feel that benefit from it, and as I call the aha moment, all you have to do is experience it once. And I'll share with you my personal experience on this one. I think it was a wintry day, and I had just my shower, and I was sitting outside in the lawn, had a cup of coffee, and I was into a mood of reflection. And suddenly a thought came to me, even if I die now, it will be all right. So once that moment came, I think that was my aha moment. I said, wow, this is it, and I want to capture that again, right? And what happened at that time was a car came along and there was a sound, and I said, oh, I got out of this. But that moment stayed with me for the rest of my life, right? So sometimes in this kind of a thing, in this mindfulness, you need one of those moments, and it happens, and it could happen even in the conference for many of us. It's not going to be a peer pressure thing. I think you are going to find, you are going to get internal satisfaction. I think satisfaction is not the right word. You're going to get that sense of joy and that sense of calmness, that sense of perceiving things as they are, not what they seem. And it's a different dimension in life. imagine, getting a new dimension, right? We all work in 3 dimensions and fourth dimension if it is time, but suddenly finding a new dimension in which things are not what they seem, right? And I think that's the powerful moment when that comes. Yeah, I think as I mentioned, and I didn't mention before, but I think brain is the next frontier, as we call it. I think a lot of studies are being done, even in our own Virginia Tech, at the Virginia Tech Institute, Carillion Research Institute. A lot of work is being done with the functional MRIs, where they have put electrodes in the brain and they look at the state of the brain during moments of contemplation versus when the mind is agitated. And they find there are some new neuronal circuits which are being formed in the body. You are from computer science, so you understand the power of a few more circuits being formed with the neuron cells, right? So, we are learning something, some new realities come along, right? So these new circuits, they are basically sending us into a different reality that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Or the technology will tell us in a way that something real to it, right? Something is really happening. It is not a hallucination. It is not getting high on a drug. It is real. Brain is undergoing some change, or it is, as I said, making new circuits and enhanced learning. So it can help us, saying that we have a technical proof behind it. It is not just, as I said, a figment of the mind or imagination. I really think, in my way of thinking, I think I normally start all my classes that I teach. One assignment I give to all of them. They come to my class, and the first assignment is every morning when they get up, they have to write 3 reasons why am I happy today. Okay. That's a assignment. They have to do it. Okay. And the kids, you can imagine in engineering, what is this? But they have to do it, right? And you see a subtle change. First time when they will report to you, they will say, "Oh, I didn't have a fight with my girlfriend last night," right? Second time, suddenly, you start seeing a change. I got up in the morning and I went outside and I suddenly found that bud was going to blossom into a flower, right? And I went outside and looked at the sunrise, right? And subtle changes take place as they continue doing this exercise. And then suddenly they start getting into their internal mind, internal state of thinking. I'm happy today because I'm alive, okay? I'm happy today because something else other than, obvious reasons, right, happen. I think slowly and slowly they get into that state. So I think if we do this exercise, or if we actually start every class with a 10-minute or even a 5-minute sitting down and unclutter your mind and just get ready for the class, I think that will tell our students to get into that state of alertness. So I think that's where we can start. I totally agree with the premise that we live in a very highly fast-paced society, and I think that calls for a different way of living. That calls for mindful living. That calls for alertness, right? That calls for vigilance on the part of our mind. That calls for prioritization of events. That calls for what is important to us. And can we it's important, like in the big data analysis, right? It is not only important to be able to connect the dots or to analyze the data, it's also important to know what not to use, right? So same thing in our lives, when there are so many things happening around us, we need to be able to figure it out. What is important, what is not important, what to ignore. And that's what mindfulness allows you to do. Put the priorities in place. And you say, this is what I need to do, and this one I can ignore. My experience with it is with yoga, and so I can speak to that. Before I actually get into my meditation or contemplation, I normally try to relax my whole body. I actually go through each and every part of my body, starting from the toes, and I say, let it relax. So once the whole body is relaxed, then I do focus on breathing, and basically I try to get myself totally into a relaxed position. I do stretch exercises before I do that, and I think the idea again is to get your body to be a little nimble, so that if I sit into meditation, I can sit with my backbone straight and not have any hurt going on. So I think to me physical yoga or the ability to sit in a lotus position or any other position that you feel comfortable with is important in terms of stilling your body. Because when the body is moving around, mind also finds a way of moving around. So I think the importance of yoga is to still the body so that the mind can be still. I think we should not be thinking of contemplative practices as another thing to do, as a waste of time. Some people might get into, we have so many things to do, I have an exam tomorrow, this is for the students. What it allows you to do is to be much more efficient in what you do. And you will find that even taking away half an hour a day actually saves you more time to do other things, to do what you do in a much more efficient manner, in a state of joy, in a state of happiness. So in conclusion, I would say, you people ask people, what are you seeking? Right? Everybody wants to be happy. Right? But what do? We spend, according to one sage, half of our lives having regrets of the past, and the other half having anxiety for the future. Right? So we miss the moment. I think what mindfulness allows you to do is to live in every moment, to have that joy of living. So we don't need any regrets of the past. Past is done. We don't need to have anxiety for the future. Let's make the present moment as joyful, as powerful as possible. That's the message.